Hello and welcome to this edition of World of Business, your weekly guide to trending business news and latest developments on the stock market. We also herald unsung, thriving business entrepreneurs on this show. The name is Bruce Chimbunde. Say Bruta if you so choose, and let's get straight into it. Ahead of the 2025 monetary policy statement expected to be unveiled this February, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Governor Dr. John Mushayawanu emphasized that maintaining a tight monetary policy is crucial for controlling inflation. And later on in the second segment, I shall be joined by Mr. Malone Gwadu, an economist who's no stranger to our screens, as we analyze this in detail. But first, we give you exchange rates as of The Zimbabwe gold to the US dollar interbank rate was at 26.38 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the Great Britain pound interbank rate was at 32.68 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the euro interbank rate was at 27.12 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the South African rand interbank rate was at 0.71 ZiG. And lastly, the Zimbabwe gold to the Botswana pula interbank rate was at 1.88 ZiG. That's it for this first segment. World of Business takes a short break and we'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to the second segment of World of Business. As alluded to earlier, ahead of the 2025 monetary policy statement expected this month, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Governor Dr. John Mushayawanu emphasized that maintaining a tight monetary policy is crucial for controlling inflation and supporting the local currency. The monetary policy statement is expected to be released anytime from today. To help us take a preview of this statement, I'm now joined by Mr. Malone Gwadu. Hello. Hi, Malone. Welcome to the program.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Earlier last year, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe introduced a new currency, the Zimbabwe gold, and later on also adjusted the Zimbabwe gold exchange rate against that of the United States dollar, all in response to stabilizing the local currency. What other notable interventions were put in place since the last statement, and to what evident benefit?
Well, obviously, it's important to note that we're coming from, when the ZiG was introduced, we're coming from a background of volatile exchange rate and inflationary pressures, which necessitated for there to be a serious restructuring of the currency management framework anchored around money supply control, liquidity control, credit control, with a view of supporting the currency in terms of, number one, its certainty, its consistency, and its ability to support the pre-existing macroeconomic framework. So its introduction and its adjustment thereto has led to more certainty in the economy, more stability in the economy, and its ability to penetrate and gain a bit of confidence in the market because of its ability to be consistent, and also its, to some extent, ability to converge between the interbank and the parallel market rates. You will be aware that the current market trends that are there is that there's a less than 30% premium between the exchange rate in the parallel market and the official market, which is within the international benchmarks. So by and large, I would submit that they struggled fairly well, although obviously there's always room for improvement. But by and large, yeah, that's where we are. We can
safely say that this has helped to stabilize the currency.
Certainly it has, and it also buttressed the existing frameworks that are there in the economy.
All right. That's a good one. The RBZ key interest rate is at 35%. What crucial role do interest rates play in terms of supporting the stability of the ZiG currency in this instance?
From a primitive perspective, interest rates play a pivotal role in the productive sector. They capacitate credit for onward lending for the economy to be able to function properly. So obviously, cheap credit is always an advocating role for the industry, so that they will be able to produce more and increase the national output generally. But peculiarizing it to Zimbabwe, where we've got a vulnerable currency and we have got a history of speculative borrowing, which has got exchange rate implications and inflationary pressures, 35% may be in line with the inflation trends that are there, annual inflation figures that are there currently in the economy. And also, it also crims away the speculative borrowers and leave the productive borrowers in the game of borrowing. Because you're trying to do away with speculative borrowing, number one, and also control money supply and liquidity in the economy.
So once we are able to control the money supply, then everything else falls in place.
I believe so, yeah.
All right. The total value of exported goods in December 2024 was USD 692.4 million, representing a 23.5% decrease from USD 905.2 million reported in November 2024. With the RBZ having introduced a targeted finance facility in December, what hope lies ahead for critical sectors like agriculture in achieving the projected 6% economic growth?
Well, the currency management framework that is there currently is an unintended consequence of limiting liquidity and money supply and credit creation for banks.
Right.
So industries are crying in terms of ability to be able to be funded, to be productive and be able to increase their productive capacity and onwardly be able to export. So the targeted finance facility, I believe, is aimed at targeting the productive sector and capacitating them to be able to produce and be able to meet their productive capabilities and the capacity that they have in the economy. By and large, being able to have a feed-through effect in the national output. So by and large, I would submit that the TFF, as it is famously known for, is going to be able to ameliorate the impact of the unintended consequence of the limited liquidity and credit creation in the economy.
All right. Malone, Professor Mthuli Ncube recently emphasized that the government will soon announce and implement some measures to support the formal sector, while making sure that informal sector begins to comply with tax, licensing and registration processes that were put in place. What do you think should be the way forward with the informal sector?
I think it's the right step in the right direction, in the sense that the informal sector needs to be formalized.
All right.
It needs to be orchestrated into the mainstream of the economy.
Okay.
They are largely operating parallel to the economy than complementary. So being tax compliant, licensing and all those things is meant to capacitate them to be in the mainstream economy, as well as maintaining the standards that the public consumes from their respective products, and also ensuring that we level the playing field between the formal sector and the informal sector. You'll be aware that there's been outcry in the industry with regards to the differences in the cost drivers on the cost basis that they operate between the formal sector and the informal sector, and this has led to undercutting between the formal sector and the informal sector.
How difficult do you think it will be to formalize the informal sector, and perhaps what needs to be done?
Well, obviously, from a business perspective, no one wants to face something that increases their costs.
Certainly,
compliance comes with costs.
I think that's the issue.
Taxes come with costs to the businesses. Those licenses come with license costs.
Yes.
But also, if someone is becoming compliant for license to be able to be considered for credit, for cheap credit through the respective ministries like Ministry of Small to Medium Enterprises, or be considered for social security, medical aids, stuff like that. I think it's also a medium to long-term low-hanging fruit that the respective policymakers can also orchestrate in a view to achieve the intended benefit of increasing compliance and formalizing the informal sector gradually into the formal system.
Right. You emphasized the need for a consultative process, which I think is certainly essential. With the 2025 monetary policy statement expected to be unveiled sometime in February, the Reserve Bank Governor, RBZ Governor Dr. John Mushayawanu emphasized that maintaining a tight monetary policy is crucial for controlling inflation and supporting the local currency. What measures or issues should be considered, addressed in this statement, basing on what we have learned from the previous statement, according to you, Malone?
Well, I think the intended benefits of a tight monetary policy stance has been achieved, where the exchange rate is largely stabilized, where the inflation is largely been dealt with, and where there's largely been a bit of convergence between the parallel market and the parallel rate and the official rate. So now we need to move from stability to sustainable support to the real economy. Because as I alluded to earlier, there is now a threat between the real economy and the monetary policy's ability to support the mainstream and the real economy. Industry as it stands
now.
So
how do we ensure convergence?
Well, obviously we need to look at the frameworks, and I think from a preemptive analysis, the targeted finance facility is already sending signals that the Reserve Bank intends to support industry through the targeted finance facility, where it's considering that yes, we have got a tight monetary policy, but beyond that we need to consider industry and its productive capabilities. So the finance facility is meant to target the industry in a way that is not inflationary, through money supply, a credit creation that is not increasing money supply and liquidity, and jeopardize the existing currency management framework. So by and large, I would submit that with the respective authorities, they need to look at a way that creates a balance between the tight monetary policy and also capacitating the economy to grow, stabilize, and complement whatever endeavors that the fiscus as well as the overall economy has.
And ultimately, that should speak to the stability of the local currency.
Yes, absolutely. And also gradually probably implement policies that are meant to increase the share of the ZiG in the other basket of currencies.
Oh, is that? That's interesting. Thank you very much, Malone, for taking time out to come and be
here
with us. It was very interesting to have a conversation with you. I was speaking there to Malone Gwadu, who's an economist. And on that note, we take a short break, and World of Business will be right back. Welcome to the final segment of World of Business, where we put the spotlight on our entrepreneur of the week. This week, World of Business team spoke to Mr. Lincoln Masiyenyama, a local entrepreneur contributing to water infrastructure developmental initiatives. Let us hear more from Cellah as she speaks to Mr. Masiyenyama.
On our segment of our Entrepreneur of the Week, this week we have got a vibrant young man who started off by just being an ice cream vendor. He was just selling ice cream from the streets, but today we celebrate him as one of the biggest entrepreneurs to ever emerge out of the Zimbabwe entrepreneurship space. Mr. Lincoln Masiyenyama is involved in bore drilling solutions. Say, thank you so much for joining us, and it's our pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you. Welcome, Cellah.
Thank you. So maybe just to get a brief understanding of how your upbringing shaped the person that you ultimately are today. Can you walk us through that?
Lincoln Masiyenyama is a guy aged 33, raised from a background where I'm a last born. So my entrepreneurial journey started when I was just after O-level, when I failed my first O-level sitting. And that's when I started selling ice creams. And I think, from my own perception, that's where Lincoln was molded from. Because look, coming from an A school, because I was by Alan Wilson, and getting into the streets, and you know how it is, being a teenager, you'll be seeing ladies. There was Girls Eye, there was Queen Elizabeth. So, Wakuzokona now, and they're selling ice creams. So I think that's where Lincoln was truly molded, because that's when all the fear was taken away. Kagunyara case, it was taken away, and that's what motivated me to be who I am today.
Can you draw from that experience that you would say you're taking with them probably through your entrepreneurship journey?
Sometimes you might think it's a case because you're going through that phase, but actually to be a blessing in disguise. I think it starts from within, what you believe in, and I believed. Still, I know at a point I haven't even reached where I want to go, but I believe that I'm going to be one of the greatest minds in the country.
Now, I understand that you are also one of the companies that are powering the presidential bore drilling scheme. What has been your experience working on this project, and what progress has been made nationwide to date?
It feels so good seeing the government empowering youth-owned organizations, and not only empowering us, and also empowering communities, because the communities which we're working with, they are also benefiting from this program.
What does this demonstrate about our government's willingness to empower the youth, and do you think that the youths in Zimbabwe are fully exploiting the available opportunities for entrepreneurship?
When it comes to success, it takes one's responsibility and one willingness to achieve what they want to do. So me, not knowing about all the other youth, but if one is actually willing to take advantage of the platform which has been created, they can actually take advantage of it. Me being an entrepreneur, it's all about looking for opportunities, and we found one and we're utilizing on it. And we thank for the environment which has been created.
What gap would you say that you're bridging, or what solutions are you bringing to what problems in Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Cellah. So there's been an issue to do with food security and agriculture. A reliable water supply is critical for agricultural production, ensuring food security and supporting the growth of the agricultural sector.
What do you think also is the importance of improving water infrastructure in Zimbabwe, particularly looking at our case where we're trying to achieve an upper middle income economy by 2030?
Thank you, Cellah. If we look to the National Development Strategic Plan 1, which emphasized on infrastructural development, water and sanitation included. Through this exercise, we have seen job creation and economic growth. You know, if you are to invest wisely in water infrastructure, it stimulates local economies and increased economic competitiveness. Job creation and economic growth, apart from those that we are also employing in the field, we have seen a number of employment increasing. We have seen our organization employing over 70 employees, mostly women. Our management is 15, but of the 15, 12 are women. So it is through such initiatives, not only is it aiding to the empowerment locally in the organization, but even in the fields where we go, we work with the communities. So there's also an employment opportunity that has been given there in the field. There's also been an issue to do with food security and agriculture. You know, a reliable water supply is critical for agricultural production, ensuring food security and supporting the growth of the agricultural sector. And also, there's also an issue to do with improved health and well-being. You know, access to clean water and sanitation is very vital and it also prevents waterborne diseases such as cholera, typhoid, etc.
Okay.
So if we are to invest in water infrastructure, it also aids in climate change.
Okay. So speaking of the achievements, aside from employing so many people, coming up with innovative solutions of having sustainable water solutions, what awards have you won to date? I know there are so many of them, but can you mention just a few?
Okay, there's been Zimbabwe CEOs Network recognition of the top ranked year 2024. There's also been ENZ Entrepreneur of the Year Award, 40 under 40 most influential CEO.
Lastly, before we close off the segment, your words of inspiration, motivation to that young man, that young lady who is looking at you in admiration, and they are probably walking through the same journey that you walked back then when you're just an ice cream vendor. What would you say to them?
Yep, success is not an overnight thing. Success, if you want to be successful, you have to be very patient. You need to be very patient and go after what you want.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, we've learned quite a lot from your journey, and I'm sure other young people out there can resonate with what you went through and how far you're going. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Cellah.
Very enlightening and illuminating conversation we've had today with a very vibrant young man who started a company that is dealing in bore drilling solutions here in Zimbabwe. He has taught us that success is not an overnight thing, the importance of patience and entrepreneurship, and ultimately the achievement of Vision 2030 as a nation. And that brings an end to this week's segment of our Entrepreneur of the Week. Be sure to join us again next week. It's back to the studio.
That's it for this week's saving of World of Business. Until next week, it's a pleasant viewing.